Well, Howard Gardner is one of the world's leading thinkers on the subject of how children learn. So we've invited him to be our guest here tonight to discuss the value of standardized tests like the SATs. A psychologist and educator at Harvard University, Dr. Gardner is the author of 17 books, including the latest, The Disciplined Mind. Dr. Gardner joins us from Boston this evening. So let's talk about what we just heard in Jane Wells' piece, Dr. Gardner. By the way, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Do you think that taking cultural factors into account is a good thing?
At first blush, I like the Striver's idea very much. Basically, it's an attempt to even the playing field in making judgments about something that's very consequential, like college admission. We all know that some people have huge amounts of advantages when they start off because of the wealth of their family and because of the schools they go to and the amount of education at home and so on. And other people have huge disadvantages. And while at the end of the day, it's true that you get credit for what you can do and not for what you can't do, when we're making judgments about people's potential, we really need to say to what extent have they overcome their circumstances, or to what extent have they made good uses of them.
What about the statement in Jane Wells' piece there when they said it's sort of like telling let's say, a black student, well, you did good for you. Isn't that a bad place to put a striving student?
I don't think so, because after all, we're not saying that you can't get the raw score, the actual score that the student received. We're saying, in addition, we're going to talk about how you did compared to other people who had the same things going for you. In a sense, it's almost like the zip code. If you tell me somebody's zip code, I can give you a pretty good prediction of how they're going to do on a college board test.
Really?
And because of the amount of resources available to people in, say, Beverly Hills compared to Watts or Compton. And this is just giving us a more objective way of saying, well, how well did this student do compared to other people who had the same amount of resources that the student did?
You know, I wonder, too, how much of the problem, and I think back to the days where I had to memorize all the dates in history class, and I wondered when the heck I'd ever need those, is the problem, instead of teaching children how to learn and fostering their intelligence, we concentrate more on drilling them with facts.
Well, the more the test is a very specific kind of test, and the more it has high stakes, the more teachers and parents are inevitably going to just train the child to do well in the test. It's common sense. So, of course, the quality of the test becomes very, very important. In thinking about the SAT this evening, I thought it would be nice to have a country or schools where you could have an entirely new version of a test each year so that nobody could just prepare for that particular test.
That's fascinating.
So if, for example, you want to know how well a student is reading, and obviously that's very important to know, you wouldn't know from one year to the next, would you have the Iowa test, would you have the California test, would you have the ETS test? So there'd be no possible way somebody could practice for a particular version of a particular test. But if a student did pretty well on this kind of randomly chosen reading test, you could be pretty confident they could read well.
I wonder why they don't do that. You know,
But I can tell you why they don't do it, because when they do bring in a new test, the scores go back down again. I remember looking at the test scores in Chicago several years ago and noticing they would go up for a while and they would go back down. And the answer became clear to me. They were introducing a new kind of test and the students weren't ready for it. So there's very big risks in teaching to tests. It's funny, the SAT, 20 years ago, ETS said, you can't drill for this. This is somehow an assessment of your true intellectual potential. Then places like Stanley Kaplan in the Princeton Review showed you could raise the points 100, 200, 300. Now ETS says, oh, we can show you how to get better for this test as well. So we have to be very, very careful to assume that any kind of a measure isn't something that you can be drilled for and get much better for.
See, this is why I like your work, Dr. Gardner. You always make me think differently. Thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Okay.
Come back again.
Good to talk to you, Dan.